Anyway, okay.
Lovely one. So thank you for your patience. It's delighted to have you all back again after our little episode on Wednesday, which unfortunately is just one of those things. But I'm delighted to say that everyone's very happy to come back this morning, and I'd really like to welcome Blaise Smith here on behalf of Artnet to give us a talk about her work. And as you know, Blaise is the Vice Principal of the Art School in the RHA, and has also been a board member there over the years, and is one of Ireland's most celebrated figurative landscape and portrait artists. So absolutely delighted to hear you, and I'm not going to waste any time because he's going to tell you a lot about himself now when he starts. And just to say, I don't know how many of you get the Irish Times, but you might have noticed he's in the Gloss magazine yesterday, so we're with a beautiful painting of lemons and silver there, but I think he's on show in the Butler.
Yeah, I have a show in the Butler. I'll show you downstairs there. It has a sign.
Come back to
yeah.
And without further ado, I'm going to let Blaise start the talk. So
Okay.
We're delighted to have you, Blaise. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paula, and thanks for asking me. And good morning. And fingers crossed now this all goes smoothly. So I'm spotlighting myself here. Here we go. Right. So this is me painting just last week, the painting that's downstairs in the easel now. And what you're looking at took about 8 hours in 2 4-hour sessions. So this is how I spend my days when I'm lucky. In fact, I generally consider it quite a success if I'm sitting at the easel with the palette in my hand by about 1 o'clock, because I don't know, I seem to have a lot of emails and stuff to deal with these days, and other stuff, and social media takes a huge amount of time, and just keeping everything going. So to actually get painting is a huge success. This week, for example, I have failed to paint almost entirely. This was last Friday, a week ago, you know. But this is basically the first pass on this painting that you're looking at. And I'm going to spend today, in fact, after we're finished here, I'm going to paint glazes over this layer. So I really quite enjoy painting when I'm actually doing it, but it's getting to the point where I'm actually doing it is the problem. It's difficult to, because there always seems to be something else to do. I'm sure that's like, you know, other things for everybody. It's just, you know, but when I'm actually doing it, I get back to my happy place as a kind of a teenager, which is what I'm going to talk about now. So this is what I do. These are the kind of paintings I do. This is a school Panorama painting that I did a few years ago. I'll just show you a quick video of me painting that one. So this is what it would have started out like. So this is me using a measuring tool here to measure each little position of each part of the building. So there I'm measuring the height of something. And you can see it's a big long 8-foot wide panel held on 2 easels, and I had this Percent for Art commission to paint in this school in Carlow, and which was great. It was in 2011. It was in the teeth of the recession. It was a wonderful port to be in the middle of a storm. I was in a school painting for a year, and the first painting I did was this one, and I just set myself up right in front of the school so that all the kids would see me and everybody get used to me being around before I ventured into the actual classrooms, you know. So I just trundled along like this, painting away, and later on I moved into the classrooms and I painted like this. I'm just going to turn sound there down on that, and you can see the kids would pose for me, and I would draw them in. They're all drumming away, and I had to be quite fast. I might get, a few hours with each kid, but I'd ask them to sit there, and they'd say, "Great, am I going to miss maths?" And I'd go, "Yeah," but they were really good at posing. Here they all are telling me what's wrong with my painting. They were great critics as well. This is me painting this girl in. She, of course, left the school about 2 weeks later. But that kept on happening. I kept on picking like fellas. The headmaster was going, "Oh, not him! You didn't pick that guy, did you?" Here's this painting taking shape. Each stage of it. So a lot of drawing for about a week, and then adding things in. And basically I was adding kids in as they took up a good pose. I'd say, "Oh, you stay there," and I'd add them in. Then it's finished there. I had great fun doing this one in the biology room, because of these amazing things they have in the biology room. So really why I'm showing you this is because I paint from life as much as I can, and I think that makes a huge difference to the type of paintings you produce, because then you're getting people's kind of opinions as you sit there. Like, in other words, of course I could have come in and just taken a photograph of this school and worked from it, but I wouldn't have had all that information from all those kids and teachers just about what was important to them as I stood there day in, day out for a year. I think I was in there 4 days a week basically for the year. And, people would just come up and chat to you, and I had my own ideas about what I should paint, but they influenced me as well about the things that I should do, and what I should focus on as the project went on, And the same would happen in a painting like this, where I stood outside this farm for actually a couple of years. I went back every March, it was, in sunny weather for 2 or 3 years, I think it was, because there obviously wasn't that much sunny weather in March, but this is what I wanted. And you can kind of feel it in the light there. But, the farmer and his son and the whole family got to know me and would come out and chat away. In fact, I remember one of the first interactions I had was they came out and said, because when they came out it was one evening and I was standing here painting this on a huge, it's 8 feet long, this painting, so it was on an easel, and I had a van and I had the thing unloaded out onto the easel on the side of the road. And behind me the sun was going down, because there's beautiful hills and rolling hills behind me in towards Kilkenny City, and down over the city. This is quite high up, this farm, and they came out and said, "Would you not paint the view?" Because behind me there was this like incredible view, And I said, "Yeah, but this is a view, and it is a view, and it's just as beautiful." In a lot of ways I was influenced to do paintings like this because Constable, at the time he was very unsuccessful in his own life. Constable, the English landscape painter, in what was it, 1820, 1830, when he was painting, because they all thought his paintings of canals and the haywain were really industrial compared to the sort of idyllic landscapes that were being painted by other artists at the time. And here was this guy painting canals, which was a bit like painting a motorway. And in fact, I did paint motorways earlier on. You'll see some of them later on. But anyway, I paint realistic paintings. What I see is what you get. I do landscapes, as you've seen. I paint still lives indoors when the weather is bad. And I'm lucky enough to be okay at portraits, and I've got some good commissions to do portraits like this one of 8 scientists for the Women on Walls campaign, which I did a few years ago, which was great fun to do because I met them all and each one came down and posed for me in the studio individually, although at first I had them all together for just one day. To organise all the diaries was a bit of a nightmare. But anyway, but it was really fantastic to meet all those really amazing people and to stand in the studio and kind of go, okay, tell me what you do, and start painting. And there was like then this incredible radio program, you know, as they told me about their area of study or research, and it was kind of amazing. And this is a painting of my parents that I did a few years ago, which was runner-up in the Zurich thing. So, well, actually, funnily enough, like, I'll just tell you a story. My mother, you know, I was giving a talk like this, and I was saying how when I do a portrait, it's a collaborative process between me and the sitter, and, you know, which is kind of also a bit of a sales spiel I give to people, you know, which is, but it's also true. If you're coming to me asking for a portrait, it's as much your painting as it is mine. And I have a big chat with you about, like, what do you want? And one of the reasons that I love sitting with people, and I do a couple of drawings of them over a couple of days, is because gradually they begin to tell me things about themselves. For some reason, it's an introspective process for the sitter. They're sitting there thinking about themselves. They know this painting is going to be about them, and they're thinking about what have they done to achieve this. In fact, some of those scientists in the last painting, you know, a couple of them actually said to me it was a really good experience. They got a kind of a day off. They came down, they posed for me, and they thought about themselves and what they were doing with their lives, because they were going to be in this painting that was about them and their contribution to society and all those kind of big questions. And so when people are sitting for me, I'm getting information from them, you know, and they say things like, I like to go to their homes, you know, and I look around, and there's things then that are gradually, they say, oh, that was something that my daughter gave me, or that was something, you know, that I got in Africa when I was out there. And I'm going, oh, you were in Africa, you know, and is that important to you? And that object then makes its way into the painting. And I think it's very important to put people in a context in a portrait with lots of information all around them, you know, about their lives. And in a lot of ways, this painting of my parents, with, you know, and after a minute, of course, looking at it, you'd notice that they're sitting with laptops in front of them. You know, it says a lot about them. There's things in the composition that were quite deliberate, where there's a kind of, all the colours are really hot and warm inside. So there's which is about the way I felt in my home as a child growing up. There was this internal warmth, and there's the cool colours outside through the window. And that's quite deliberately stage managed. Although there were things that were happy accidents, you know, my mother is sitting on the kitchen side. There you go. That's just the way it was. You know, my father's on the other side. My mother has her bag by her feet. Something she learned because I used to steal money from her for cigarettes when I was about 16. That kind of thing, just always kept her bag by her side in the house. I don't think it was really me started that, but anyway, you know, all of the, you know, and also, you know, so this is the way I would see them as I came through the door often, and I thought of this painting and doing this painting for a long time. But, you know, speaking of the collaboration aspect, you know, I remember, as I say, telling this whole story about how a portrait is a collaboration between the artist and the sitter, and you ask the sitter what they want. And my mother said, wait a second, you didn't ask me what I wanted. And I said, that's true, I actually never did ask you what you wanted in this painting. I said, actually, because this is not your painting in this case. This painting is for me. This is how I want to remember you, you know. And, you know, so that was that, you know. But I suppose, you know, people always ask me, you know, would you not just take a photograph? Is that not the same of this kind of image, you know? And this whole talk I'm about to give you is the long answer to that question. And to answer that question about why not take photographs? Because it's the big challenge really for anybody who makes figurative paintings now, is like, well, does a photograph not do the same job? I mean, I'm often saying, kind of as a joke, that, you know, because people are talking about their jobs getting automated nowadays, and I'm going, well, painting actually got automated, figurative painting like I do, got automated in about 1850, because effectively a lot when photography came along, it did all the things, all the kind of superficial functions of painting. And in fact, it democratized image making and portrait making, you know, because obviously getting your portrait painted in 1850 was something that only the very rich could do or have done. And suddenly then there was photographs, you know, by 1870, many people were getting family photographs taken of themselves, you know, of all walks of life. So in one way that was a good thing. So meanwhile, you know, painting was automated, you know, but so I have to go back a bit to rationalize why I make paintings at all, you know, and it all started when I was a teenager. I was very good at drawing. I did this when I was 17, and that year I also won the Texaco with a painting they lost, actually, somehow. So I was kind of, I mean, just, look, I was a bit of a prodigy. I could really draw well. Can't really draw much better now than I could when I was 17. However, the kind of being able to draw was not that great. It got me thrown out of school twice. You know, it wasn't so much the drawing, it was I would be drawing all the time and somebody would try and stop me drawing, and there'd be a conversation afterwards in which generally ended with me getting really cross and annoyed and telling the teacher, or in a couple of cases the headmaster, to fuck off, you know. But they were not, back in 1980, was it 80? Yeah, 1980 to 85, they were not really that keen on painting as a career in the school I was in, or drawing, you know. It was, you were possibly benignly advised to do something else. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a real job and all that kind of thing. And, you know, whereas when I worked in the school later in Carlow, you know, if somebody said in that school they wanted to be an astronaut, there wasn't a kind of a like, don't be silly, you know, attitude. Instead, and I think this would probably apply to education across the board, but when people said, you know, I want to be an astronaut, they'd say, okay, well, let's look up, you know, on the internet how you could do that. We'll see what you need to do to get into NASA, and we'll see, you know. So you weren't immediately put off. You were simply told, okay, well, let's look at the steps. Whereas when you said you wanted to be an artist, you know, it just didn't seem real to people, you know. So as you can imagine, so I ended up going to NCAD without a leaving cert. They just kind of let me in through the interview and said, oh, you better sort out the leaving cert later. And I was like, yeah, right. But the only problem was that, having been, you know, so I was really good at drawing, as I say, and painting as well. I had an oil set and I'd done a few oil paintings. But as soon as you go through that archway there, within about 2 weeks you're given to understand that painting and drawing is kind of very anachronistic and old hat, and it's just wasn't hip, you know, wasn't cool. And that was like coming from the tutors, but it was just the general atmosphere of the place, and there was just, you know, and this is a great pity because, you know, most people who got to NCAD then, and I think now also, would be coming in on a drawing portfolio, particularly if they're heading for fine art. I think just in general, they would generally have been the person who was best at drawing in their class. And then to be told that the whole thing that you kind of built your personality around, you know, as in other words, I'm the person who's good at drawing in school, in the class, or, you know, amongst my peers, and then to be told, well, that's not that really interesting, you can forget about that, is tough going. As well as the fact that an art college is kind of a boot camp for the ego, you know. I mean, you can go do an accountancy course and, you know, you do the sums and you add up the ledger, and, you know, if the sum isn't right, the tutor just says, oh, that isn't right, or, you know, whereas in NCAD you were asked to kind of plunder your identity as subject matter for, you know, installation works. You were asked to kind of, you know, I mean, I literally remember somebody with their grandmother's underwear, you know, as an installation piece, and other stuff like that being used, you know, and in a lot of ways, people's childhood or things that had happened to them, you know. And when I think about it now, I think that's actually quite a dangerous thing, because, like, you know, it's kind of like therapy by people who are not qualified to, you know, and you're supposed to bear all or to have integrity and do stuff. So it kind of really, in retrospect, quite annoyed me. And also, like, on top of that, you can do all that work using your own personal material, and the next thing is you're told that that's rubbish or you haven't done it well, you know. So it's really tough going for an 18-year-old, you know, who do, you know. So, you know, I just think it was problematic anyway, and we were all kind of, I felt, put through the ringer, you know, in terms of our ego. And the other problem then was that, you know, as somebody who could draw anything, the problem was like, well, what's the subject going to be, you know? Oh, my video isn't working. That's very annoying. So basically the point I was going to here is show you a lot of flashing images here of different things. And the point being that anything is a good subject. So, for example, this thing is a good subject, and the next image would be a good subject. Oh, that's very disappointing. Don't know what's happening there. Anyway, so because anything was a good subject, this meant that by the end of about 3 years in art college, I was doing these kind of paintings, because I literally couldn't figure out what I should paint. You know, anything was potentially good. I'd read all about Duchamp, and I'd read about what was, you know, the ideas of found objects and found subjects. So basically, anywhere you turned was good. But this meant it was a bit like doing, you know, a search in Google. You know, you got 90 million replies. You know, everything was valid. I found it very confusing. So I began just doing test pictures. And, you know, I ended up I just didn't get on really with the whole art college experience. Maybe I was just against institutions probably in general, you know, so I made these, and then I also made paintings like this, which were about things being, you know, too late to be really original, which was a real feeling you had as well, that you were not, no matter what you did, somebody had done it already. I remember very early on, I did do a painting, and it was a self-portrait, but it was all quite warped. And somebody said, oh, that's just like a Lucian Freud, you know. And I had never heard of Lucian Freud. I was about 6 months in there at the time. And I went down and looked at a Lucian Freud book, and it was quite like my painting superficially. I see that it was only superficial now. But at the time I thought it was just the same. I thought, well, obviously this person, Lucian Freud, has covered this area really well, and I can't possibly add anything to this. So I didn't paint like that anymore. Whereas kind of if I hadn't known, I should have been just let off to keep going in that direction. It wouldn't have done any harm, you know. It would have been good. So I made this big clock, you know, and I also made this one, which is the International Artist Clock as well. So, you know, anyway, all this kind of piss-taking and attitude began to annoy some of my tutors, and I also got thrown out of NCAD in the end. So both of these, getting thrown out of school and NCAD, is kind of ironic, because I ended up, as you know, as I've mentioned earlier, painting in a school for a year. And that second time around was certainly the happiest days of my life. And then I also was, a few years ago, appointed to the board of NCAD, which was funny. So I was on the board there for 3 years, you know, and it was kind of the same, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, it was still difficult to change it from, you know, there was this peer-to-peer kind of writing from the tutors about what would be delivered I won't go on about that. But the upshot of it was that when I left NCAD, I didn't paint for 7 or 8 years. I did not pick up a brush. I did not draw. I decided that if I wanted to make a cultural impact, I should get into television. And I tried to make a few documentaries. And instead, I ended up getting, while I was doing this, I had some expertise, and I ended up getting asked to work in computers. And I worked in the computer science department in Trinity as a videographer in the very early days of multimedia in about 1991 or 92. I began working there, and I worked there for 4 or 5 years. And I also then went freelance and had an office with the designer Niall Sweeney in Art House, which had just started up in Temple Bar. And so we were working away in Art House, you know, but Temple Bar is probably still the same. There was Kango hammers going off all the time. It was incredibly noisy. Like, they were digging up the street, and then they'd fill it in, and then they'd dig it up a week later to put in electricity, and then they'd fill it in, and then they'd dig it up a week later to put in telecoms, and they'd dig it up a week later to put in water. It was kind of mad. And around that time, I moved in 1996, I moved from Temple Bar to the middle of the countryside in Kilkenny with my partner Orla Kelly. We just kind of saw a house down here. We took a chance, and this turned out to be one of the best decisions I was ever a party to, was moving to the countryside for me in my life. So I moved literally to that's the map of where I live actually, but to a field in, the middle of the countryside in rural Kilkenny. But I was still working in computers. And in fact, when I moved to Kilkenny in 1996, broadband was due to arrive the following year. So it arrived about 2.5 years ago, just before the lockdown, just in time, in actual fact. But anyway, so I was teleworking. I was doing a lot of interface design and multimedia design. I was doing the early CD-ROMs and so on in 1996, and YouTube hadn't even been invented, or Facebook or any of that stuff. So I was working away there in a dark room doing graphics, with the big computer screen. But a lot of my time was spent looking at this, which is a progress bar, as whatever rendering or Photoshop thing I was doing took its sweet time to figure itself out and do all the calculations. And sometimes I was looking at this, which was upsetting. And on a really bad day, I was looking at this, which means your Mac is dead. But really, this is like a self-portrait of me at the time. A guy working on a screen in a dark room, looking unhappy. And because that's what you're doing, you're sitting in a room with the curtains drawn. And meanwhile, I'd go for walks, and outside there was this. And so I'd go for these lovely walks nearby with our dog and so on. And as a child, I had painted a lot and drawn, and it was just so beautiful, and I really felt it would be rude not to paint it. And I literally went out one day with the support of Orla, who bankrolled me, said, okay, I'll give you a couple of years to paint. And I went out and bought a set of paints one day after 8 or 9 years of not painting. And just sat down and began to paint. This was not an early one. They were quite crap, actually, the first paintings. I was quite surprised at how bad they were. I have a couple of them still. They're so bad I won't even show them to you, because it wasn't as easy to get back on the bicycle as I thought, So the other thing was, like, I was in Kilkenny, and I couldn't have done it in the city. I would have been too self-conscious, and people in the arts who I knew, and people from NCAD who I was in, peers from NCAD, would have shown up within a week in the city and said, what are you doing that for? Why are you painting a realistic painting, And I was able to sort of it was almost a year before somebody did show up, but I had a year to kind of just say, actually, I'm just enjoying this. I just like doing this. This is nice to make these paintings. So initially the paintings were all quite small. So this is like 30 by 30 centimeters or so. But within a couple of years, like that was done in 2000. That's up to 4 feet across. You know what I mean? So gradually, I just began to be able to make them bigger. But also, this process of being kind of left alone in the countryside, I was able to develop a rationale for why it was worth painting, and why it was worth painting in particular from direct observation. And I didn't have to excuse myself. So these are the reasons for me to get up in the morning. And it kind of starts a bit oddly over here, or I have an affinity with these works. So Romano Palca began painting the numbers from 1 to infinity on canvases, one after the other. I think he did one a day or maybe one a week, I can't remember. He got to, there it says there, it's at 5,607,249 before he died. And I kind of like this idea of checking that all the numbers are there. Or that's what I think this is about. Do you know what I mean? And you can take a photograph of somewhere and do a painting from it, but it's completely different from actually observing it, or it's like the difference between like flying somewhere and walking somewhere. To walk somewhere, you are walking every step of the way. The way there's that kind of almost dislocating sensation when you just arrive somewhere out of a plane, and all that distance that you've traveled in between is lost. Whereas this is going through every number. And for me, to paint from life is me looking, it's a first-hand account with me looking with my own eyes at something. So this is the Spanish painter Antonio Lopez, who I had been painting 3 or 4 years in Kilkenny in my way. And I went to Madrid and I saw this actual painting in a poster in a cafe, and I went, oh, that's a painting. Who the hell is that? And then I found out all about him, and a lot of the things he had been doing for many years were things that I was interested in doing. So this painting, for example, would have been painted over several years. He would have set himself up every morning on the Gran Via in Madrid, and added a little more to this painting each day. But it's that steady Zen-like process of observing and making mark after mark after mark that all builds up into this extremely convincing but first-hand observation of the world as he sees it. And so I think maybe it was a couple of years after I was doing paintings like that, but I began to do them for much longer periods of time. So this is I like to think I did the same as both Opalka and Lopez there with this farmyard. I painted this every March and April for 3 years. I would go over there and stand there for a couple of weeks in those 2 months. And sometimes you'd get there with the van, unload everything. This painting is 8 feet across. Unload everything and set up and just be started painting, and then it would start to rain because it's Ireland. That's the one advantage that Lopez has in Madrid, is that it just would stay sunny, So, that's the thing. And every little observation, all these little marks that I make, is a decision. And each one is evaluated by the painter, and then in turn by the viewer. So, as you can see from the video, the marks are quite crude in a lot of ways. When you see them close up, they're impressionistic. But when you pull back, then they begin to make kind of sense. All these little blobs, of paint add up to an image. And in a way, when you're viewing an image made up of all little blobs of paint as a viewer, you are assembling them in your mind. And that's what I like about Velázquez's paintings, for example, is that he gives you just enough clues to make something look realistic. So it kind of remains interactive. So that's that painting. You see there's a lot of small blobs there. I did that for Waterford City Council, County Council, City Council in 2016. Took a long time. Now I did not paint this from life. I did it from all sorts of sources, you know. And that's the final painting there. But it's 5 meters across and about 1.5 meters high, made up of 52 panels. So the reason these little blobs are kind of interactive that Velázquez makes and that I try to make as well as him, if I can, is because the viewer is kind of still inventing it with their mind. When they make the interpretation of those little details, that means something then in their mind. Do you know what I mean? So they've got to assemble that. So that's why I'm a little suspicious, say, of photorealism, which gives you nothing to do, you know. And then the other thing about a painting, in fact, I can just show you a little video here as well. I'm just going to spin forward here to this. That Waterford painting that I did was to basically this painting had been done in 1736, and they wanted to do a companion piece to it from today. This was the first cityscape done in Ireland in 1736, and you can see some of those buildings are still standing on the quayside in my painting. But you can see how all these exhaustive little details that the painter Van der Hagen put in, you know, that's what's kind of important. This information, if you like. And this gets back to my working computers as an interface designer. You know, a painting is a fantastic interface. It gives out information back to viewers over hundreds of years, you know. So, oh, you can't hear me.
It's just gone a bit low.
Okay, is that me back now?
Much better. That's
Sorry,
fine.
sorry, it dropped out there. Well, I just repeat what I said there. So, uh, yeah. So the thing about these kind of paintings is they're a first-hand account and they last a hell of a long time. This painting by Holbein is nearly 500 years old. It was painted in 1533. It's in the National Gallery in London. And it's like a piece of information technology that's been working perfectly for all of this time. And it gives us an incredible amount of information. You know, and it's a wonderful interface in a lot of ways, which is what I was designing for computers in 1990, you know. And that was one of the reasons I suddenly realized that, you know, if I made a painting, it was kind of like a time capsule, and somebody would hang it on their wall, and it would keep working for all this time. And I used the same technique, you know, as Holbein used for a lot of those paintings. Like these are the panels for the Waterford painting, and this is gesso. Can you hear me now, Paula? You can, yeah. So this is me putting...
Yes, it sounds really good.
Yeah. So this is me putting gesso panels together for that Waterford painting, and this is the same technique that Holbein would have used, you know, and that's quite deliberate choice on my part, because I want that painting of Waterford to last as long as his painting. So I'm playing a very long game. I want the paintings to be kind of time capsules. So this is a painting in a school. In fact, it was the school that expelled me in Dublin. So they asked me back after I did the other school to paint. So here's the art room with all the kids in it, you know. But again, it's painted in oil on gesso panel because just like this painting, you know, my paintings are kind of documentary paintings. So this is the schoolwork series of paintings that I made. And, you know, people will look, you know, my ideal viewer on these things is a social historian in about 200 years who'll come back and say, wow, look at that, isn't it great the way they all worked in the same room together, or whatever, you know what I mean? They're not doing it by screen, you know. This is incredible, you know. And I mean, when I was making the proposal for these paintings, you know, it was a percent for art scheme and it was a competitive submission. You know, I was saying, if somebody had been asked to make paintings of a school in 1911, they would be fascinating things to look at now, you know. And
there's a chat there, sorry to interrupt,
sure,
asking what are the panels made of?
They're
painting on.
Yeah, the current advice from all the technical books is to use MDF. It's particle board. And the reason that MDF is apparently good is because basically it's a big lump of plastic. It's held together by plastic with wooden particles in it. And, you know, some people have said to me, oh, you know, would you not use canvas? I do use canvas as well, but canvas is also a particle board made up of fibres, you know, woven together. So you leave either of them in water, which is, you know, for a week, which is the same as leaving them in the atmosphere for 200 years, and bad things are going to happen, you know. But the Holbein painting, which is painted on oak panels, I'll just go back to it for a second, has a lot of cracks in it and has had a lot of restoration work on it. Because the oak panels split and are not, you know, holding up because they're absorbing water all the time from the atmosphere, from just the air. So, you know, you have to control the humidity around the painting and so on nowadays, you know. So I'm betting on MDF to have the half-life of a nuclear isotope because it's basically plastic. And I also paint on canvas. So I say, you know, I hope that the MDF is going to. So this one here is like on MDF. All the ones in the schoolwork thing were on panels, aiming mainly for longevity. Excuse me. Excuse me. Right. So for example, when I was in the school, I painted the loos because, of course, everybody spent so much time in the loos that I felt it'd be a pity not to paint them, you know. But I remember the consternation, like from the various students and teachers, you know, going, "You're not painting the loos." And I was going, "Yeah, I am," you know, because it's good. It's important for us to, you know, say somebody in 200 years, this would be really interesting for them to see what a 21st century toilet looked like in a school, you know. I mean, I also painted I don't have it here actually, unfortunately, but I painted a still life of a first year's books, you know. And because I just thought, well, the books are going to be gone in 10 years even, you know. And the first year's books were nearly a metre high when they were piled up, her books, you know, that she had to carry in and out of school. And I also, like, would have painted machines and so on to do with Cork's road building plan. You know, this is me painting that. And again, you see, this is you know, the idea of doing a first-hand account. Like, I'm actually standing in that yard. It's just off to my left, that digger, you know, painting that on site for about a month. I remember, you know, I was getting quicker by then at painting things. And, you know, that would be the setup there. In fact, that particular painting, I remember there was a windy day, and the feckin' thing, I bent down to pick something up off the ground. At the same time, a gust of wind blew, and the entire thing fell on me, and hit me in the head. My hair is printed into the sky on the top right on the actual painting. Anyway, I was okay, and I also painted the, you know, this one. I loved painting these machines, I have to say. But there's another one there as well. Obviously, I put loads of them in because I really like them. I like painting machines, you know. In a way, because, like, you know, this is like an extension of the driver's body. You know, I also did portraits of the drivers and so on, and I also did paintings of the road network in Cork. And I used to joke with the engineers that my paintings would last longer than their roads. And I think that's probably true, because if you've ever seen a road that's out of use, the weeds are coming in from the side, they're literally tearing it apart. Within about 10 years, you know, when I was painting these, I remember finding the old Skibbereen Road, I think it was beside the new main road. The old road, it was literally just being shredded. There was just plants getting in underneath the tarmac and just tearing it apart. There's cat's eye, you know. So I like doing all these little things that are that document sort of boring things that nobody's really going to record, because I do think that they're kind of interesting and will be interesting in the future. This is another one from that series, you know, and I suppose when I finished that series, that was in 2000, you know. It was a commission for the Cork County Council Millennium, you know. So these are the road engineers at the time. But of course, many people said to me, "Oh, is that the clerical staff?" You can imagine, you know, it was just kind of like, and I kind of loved, in a way, that assumption, incorrect assumption about what these people did, you know. Around the same time, I got a commission to paint the Kilkenny landscape. So I've been painting it all along as well, anyway, but again, it's to document the landscape and the things in it. So I, you know, and I kind of deliberately paint things that are the least observed, that kind of would make bad photographs in a way, and that people, you know, think are so ordinary as they are just not that interesting that they pass unremarked. But also, I mean, metaphorically, what's going on in this painting is there's a wall, big ugly concrete wall. Well, it's kind of beautiful, I think. I love painting walls like that with their, you know, the pore marks and so on, and they're just gorgeous, you know. But the other thing is, it's blocking you from the countryside, you know, and you know, that's kind of really just what's simply going on there, you know. But also there are things like you know, just the beautiful colours that are in this shed, you know, I think they're beautiful colours, particularly, you know, the red door and the girder on the left hand side of the painting there that's holding the whole barn up, you know, the green and red and the rust and so on, and the wall. I love a bit of old wall now, I have to say. I just can lose myself in a concrete wall, you know. I just love building up the texture and so on. But I suppose all of these things will be gone, I think, in as little as 200 years. And these paintings are there to show what they look like. I mean, one of the things we forget when we look at, say, the Mona Lisa, which is so cliched almost that people forget what it is. You know, when you go and see the Mona Lisa in the Louvre, you know, I mean, there's one thing you can be absolutely certain of, is that it was in the room with Da Vinci 500 years ago. There's very few things that you can actually link directly to an historical person or situation, you know, and paintings do that. They are these first-hand accounts. So meanwhile, while all of that other stuff is going on, I also paint still life paintings, which are really just formal exercises in composition and painting, you know. And you know, at the moment I have a show in the Butler Gallery, you know, and it was curated by Anne O'Sullivan, the director there, and she kind of surprised me because she said, "Oh, we'll do a show," and I was going, "Great, we'll do a show," and I was delighted and felt very honoured and privileged to be asked. And I assumed, because we were in the, you know, Kilkenny, that she was going to go for the Sheds, you know, and we'd have a show of Sheds. But she surprised me when we had the second meeting. She said, because I sent her all my stuff, and she said, "We'll do still lives." And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, that's very left field. Okay, great, delighted, you know, off you go." And then, you know, this show is on at the moment down in the Butler Gallery in Kilkenny. It'll be finished on November the 14th. I was thinking about it the other day. You won't see a show of figurative paintings by one artist very often in a institutional gallery, you know. So there you go. Here is one, you know. Go and see it if you like figurative paintings. But curiously, when I walked into the show, you know, she hung it and everything, and I said, "You do what you need to do," and she hung it, and I walked in and I went, "God, she's made me look really happy, and it's all so colourful." And I really hadn't expected that, to be honest with you. And in a way, what she did was very clever. She left out all the sheds, which would have been a bit of a mood, you know, brought your mood down. Whereas instead, this just looks so colourful, and I hadn't really seen it in myself that I was quite a colourful painter, you know. So I have her to thank for that, you know. Sorry, moving along here. So, you know, these kind of paintings, and you know, as I proceeded with painting, I you know, began to minimalise. They became much more abstract. So these are kind of really, they're abstract paintings that happen to look like things, you know, and they become quite colour themed as well, you know. You know, for example, I try to make, I know this is just simple practicalities and why these are kind of formal exercise. So I had this beautiful baguette painting here. This beautiful baguette set up on the table, and I was trying to paint it, but it hadn't been sliced, you know. And I couldn't get it to work, you know, as a painting. It was just kind of a bit boring, but I knew there was beautiful things happening in the crust, and I was looking forward to painting it. But I just could not get it to work, so eventually I thought, okay, fuck it, I'll just eat it, it's going to go stale. So I sliced it, and as soon as I sliced it, I went, whoa, 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 that's good, you know. And so the slice, that little bit of action, as it were, tiny narrative, if you like, just makes the thing work. And the thing about these still lives is, you know, they don't have to mean anything, and paintings in general don't have to mean anything. Like one of the things I don't do, for example, is I don't sign my paintings, because I don't really want any writing in it. I mean, I think one of the other big purposes of paintings is to give your eye a place to rest. Like, most of these paintings are in people's own homes, and they, you know, in most people's homes, when they sit down, there's in their own kitchen, there's like writing on the cereal packet. There's writing around them, and paintings are one of the few places you can have just image. So it operates on a purely visual basis, and I think that's one of the purposes of paintings, is just to give your mind a place to rest. And that's what's good about abstract paintings. And it's also probably why people enjoy taking a walk in the countryside, because unlike walking down a city street, they're not given lots of writing to make decisions about. Because when you see a piece of writing, you're immediately going to have to think about it, or decide you want to agree with it or disagree with it. You're going to have to parse it in some way. Whereas paintings, ideally, operate on a purely visual language. So I'm always very upset when I go into the National Gallery, and you know the way they have a piece of text beside many, if not all, of the paintings at nearly all exhibitions and all of their things, and it's about a long essay, and you're left looking at this. I go in and watch people, and they bend over and they spend 5 minutes reading the the text, and only about 30 seconds glancing up and down at the painting to see if it matches the text or does it make sense. And I feel you should just be able to just walk around and just let the images hit you. So that's why, like in this show, there are no tags, and there is no writing near the paintings, and and there's no signatures on them either. I never sign them. I always sign them on the back and stuff like that, just for so people know it's by me. But there's no need for any writing, and it should just hit you on a purely visual level. Somebody asked me recently. They said, I don't understand abstract paintings. Could you tell me, could you try and explain them to me, And I was going, well, they don't mean anything in that sense. I said, it's like a piece of music, you don't go, what does a piece of music mean in that literal, the first 8 bars mean this and the next 8 bars mean that. What you've got to ask yourself when looking at any painting is, how does it make you feel? And I think in contemporary art, they may have lost sight of the fact and begun to put too much text around everything. Because in the end, it's just about beauty. Back in art college, the worst thing you could say about anybody's painting was, that's nice. That was about as damning as it could get. But actually, I think it's very important to have beauty, and there's a sense that if you paint this, it has a kind of integrity because it's more valid, because it's more authentic or more real looking. But this was also on my kitchen table at the same time, and they're both equally valid. So it's taken me a long time to realize that just pure beauty and pleasure is okay, because that's not a theme of contemporary art, and I find myself always sort of beating against it, I'm going to finish up on this one. This is a painting of Tommy Tucker's Pot. So if I was asked what this painting is about, I would have to say it's just about strawberries. That's it. Like, it's just called strawberries, Wexford strawberries, right? But this one, on the other hand, there is a bit more going on. But the rest of them are just, a bowl of apples or something, or a bowl of lemons. But this one was given to me as a christening. This pot, I should say, was given to me as a christening present when I was born in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, in 1967, by the houseboy, which he was about 20 years older than my parents, so he wasn't really a boy, but that's what they were called in Sierra Leone at the time. And as I was painting it, I had recently seen a documentary. The pot was sitting in my studio actually for about 10 years on the top of a cupboard here, with me going, I must get around to painting that. So I finally did, because I watched a documentary about Sierra Leone, which is the poorest country in the world at the moment, or maybe the second poorest at the moment. And one of the reasons is that the West has been exploiting it during all the series of civil wars it had, But one of the main exports from Sierra Leone is the ore that makes titanium white, which is in this painting, and also all the walls that are probably around most of you are all painted to titanium white. And to get the ore for titanium, they basically have to flood a valley for about 5 years, and they block it off and flood it, and all the people who live in that valley are given like $50 to feck off up the hill while they flood it, and they put this huge machine down that mines the thing. And you know, it leaves, they pay $8 a ton, I think it is, to Sierra Leone for this ore, and by the time it reaches Rotterdam, it's $80 a ton. So, you know, and then of course the second biggest export from Sierra Leone is aluminium, which the pot is made from. And the third biggest is cocoa, which I used to make in that pot as a child. That was the first thing I learned to make, was hot chocolate, as you do. And so there's a lot tied up in that particular painting. But as I say, on the other hand, this is just a bowl of lemons that look nice. I'm going to leave it there. Oh yeah, and finally, yay. That's what painting is really about.
They were beautiful. They really were. The pot, like, I thought at first, I mean, it's like a photograph of a pot. You know, it's not. It's so beautiful in a way. But the story.
Yeah, it's a good painting. I mean, it's definitely probably one of my best paintings. You know, but maybe, and that worries me in a way, because I'm going, you know, does the fact that it has some sort of meaning to me make me put more into it, or is it just more that
you're more involved?
Yeah, you see, I'd say to them I don't think so. I think it's more that I like painting metal. I'm good at painting metal, and when you throw the dice in any painting, when you do it, sometimes they land all sixes, and sometimes it's only 4 and 5. It's keeping the double ones to a minimum. You know, that is the trick. You know, I'm going to unpin myself here now.
Yeah, I'm going. Well, here's one question. When did you paint the pot, Blaise, from Cape Byrne?
2016. So.
We could take questions now, I'm sure, if you want to.
Yeah, I'll unmute everybody. Hang on a minute.
And maybe some people would like to ask a question or two before Blaise goes. If you could just raise your hand, or
yeah, I'm going to go to. Just give me a second. I'm going to go to gallery view, and I'm going to unmute everybody. How do I unmute everybody?
People will have to open their video. Would anyone like to ask any questions there? I can see a few people.
Can I unmute?
I thought that was interesting. You know, about the still life. I really enjoyed your explanation of it. You know, it's making me really think about them.
There's a lovely documentary. It's on my Facebook feed there. I'll put it up again today. I'll repost it again. A BBC Scotland documentary. It's about an hour and a half long, about still life, and I found it really interesting. It made me think. I mean, I only saw it for the first time about 6 months ago. Really made me think differently about still life. How still life, like, you know, that women were only allowed to paint still life in the 15th, 16th, 17th century by the academies in France and so on.
Yeah.
So the idea of the domestic and so on. Anyway, I'll let you watch the video. It just made me think differently about still lives in general. And they're relatively new. Like the first one, the still life, is supposed to be Caravaggio's still life of the bowl of apples, you know. That's the first recorded still life. But I'll put it up on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to unmute people.
Yvonne, is it?
Yeah.
You go to participants. Well, they can unmute them. Go to participants, and then down the bottom you can deselect. You flick over participants.
Yeah, I seem to be only able to ask people to unmute. Maybe you're in control of that, are you? I'm not sure.
No, but they can unmute themselves now. Anyone, if you click the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me, Paula?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly now.
Okay. Hi, Blaise.
Hi, Yvonne. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. I only came in at the last part of your talk. because I was actually celebrating last night and I was away. And the thing I wanted to say is you have a great influence on people, because there I was dining and whining and dining, and there was the usual, the glass of wine and I was looking at everything on the table as a still life. And then I was saying to myself, yes, Blaise nearly always has a white tablecloth underneath a lot of his paintings, and it definitely makes them pop. And there was I photographed. My husband was saying, would you ever eat your meal and stop looking at the still life? But anyway, it was most enjoyable. And I just wondered, is this a device of yours, or is it conscious, or, is that it, that it makes the fruit or whatever you have stand out, the white tablecloths? I love them, by the way.
What's happening is, I'll just show you this while I'm talking, is that they're the way I'd see them as I come into the kitchen. When you come in, you're standing there and you're looking down like this. Like that's literally what's going on. So I'm just standing there looking down at the table. As I said in and it's the way I see them. But then it had the happy accident of flipping it upwards towards me, and making sort of like the ellipses in the thing, like the teapot and the sugar bowl in that one of the lemons. They're turned to upwards and towards you. So the problem with it's not in this painting, and it's kind of deliberately removed. But the problem with a lot of traditional still lives is you have a table edge in the foreground. You know what I mean? If you're sitting down, and I was never 3 feet high. Do you know what I mean? Looking at the edge of a table, I was always looking downwards at a table when I came in. That's how I see it. And when you're sitting eating, you're looking down at the plate turned up to you. So. You can see it kind of in some of those paintings, like they're all flipped up and towards you. So I'm very, I was glad then that they looked a bit like, is it like it's one of the Scots, Michael, Patrick, or William? Which one is it? Is it William who does the abstract? William does the abstract, vessels, and you can very much see that being kind of parsed in a realistic way in this painting. That William Scott idea of an outlined vessel, and so I see them as abstract paintings really, but also because of this kind of looking down, you kind of have control of the space. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're looking down at something like that, it's the stuff that's on the tabletop just in front of you that you can reach out and touch, and you can control it. And I think certainly I can speak as a man, and say that to be in control is a very comforting feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like, and what you know what I mean? Like, to be, yeah. But what I'm saying is, we're all trying to control our environments. Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole project of humanity is to control the environment. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Like, that's part of the problem that we have now, is we've controlled it too much. Do you know what I mean? Like,
during the pandemic, we didn't have much control, Blaise.
Well, exactly. So coming right back at you, exactly. So but what I'm saying is that's why then these are comforting, is that sense of, I can have that sugar, I can eat that strawberry, Does that answer you, Yvonne, there?
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for your nice comments at the beginning.
Anyone else like to ask a question there before we finish off? Like, I read out the chats as you go. There's a good few saying thank you so much, and what a lovely way to start a miserably wet and windy day. Somebody there.
Is it miserably windy?
So anyone else before? Well, it's getting quite windy here.
All right.
It's stormy, kind of windy.
The question: how many years' work is in the Butler show, Blaise?
So the first one was painted in 1997.
Okay.
So it's about just under. I would love for my press release to be able to say 25 years, but I'm just a bit short of that. It's about 24 years of paintings, and looking at them is a bit like looking at some other painter who shares some of my predilections, but is a completely different person. Like it's like that person who's the painter gets more and more like me as time gets on and the paintings get nearer. But none of them, if I was doing them, any of them in the morning, I'd do them totally differently. Do you know what I mean? So it's like looking at some, like, and some of them,
Moved on, yeah.
yeah, but also some of them, I can see why, like, musicians must, you know, if they had a hit in 1967 and they're asked to constantly play that song exactly the way it was on the record, it must, like, I couldn't paint like that. And it's really nice to see some of them because I'm going, well, that's really quite nice. Like, it's almost like, who did that? It's pretty good. And
You feel you've lost something as well, though, from the past work. You lose a bit of innocence or something. Do you feel that or not?
absolutely, no, I do, yeah. And I feel some of them are better than I could do now in ways that I wouldn't be able to. Like, there's sort of a naivety in some of the early ones that was quite deliberate. I wasn't trying to be very realistic. They were kind of like the coffee pot painting. They were painted in a few hours, and you know, like I'll go back to the lemons here for a second. You know, the lemons, you see the shadows underneath that. They're not very sophisticated, but it was really direct and it was done in a day, the painting. Whereas these ones are a little bit more finished and they're done in a few days, 3 or 4 days, because I'm coming back to sort out the thing. So there's something nice about the directness of that I'm not sure I'd be able to do now. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, even the way the sugar bowl in the top right, it's not really finished. It looks more like the underpaint, but it's kind of good for that. You know what I mean? So that's what I've lost. That you know, and there's no going.
There's no tags on them. I love that, because you go into the National Gallery and they're all, you know, the usual punter. They're all looking at the bloody label under the painting, and you just feel like saying, "Don't look at that. Just look at the painting."
Yeah,
it drives me bonkers, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. That's exactly. It drives me bonkers. I don't mind. Like, I think, like in my show here, like, were you at it? You know, you saw the way there is titles, but on a different wall. You know what I mean? There's a kind of a map of the show. Is the way they're.
It's the purpose totally. You know, this tag thing. There's all the history of the artists, and it's nuts. You know.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I got asked did I want to put labels under each of these paintings in the show, and I was going, no. I mean, because immediately people are. It's like a little buzzy bit of writing that's calling for their attention down there, and we're so caught up with writing. I think, you know, we think writing is important. We're taught it's important so much throughout our lives that it calls for our attention. We kind of go, that must be important down there, you know. And so it's a mission, you know, to leave writing out of these paintings, you know, and just give, you know, and in a way that's why, you know, I like abstract paintings as well, because they don't even challenge you with, you know, this looks like something, you know. It's just kind of, how does it make you feel? As I say,
it looks really well on that the shots you're showing there, because you're looking at the paintings and there's nothing to distract you.
Yeah.
I think it looks really, really well there. I'm sure you're getting really tired now. Like, is there anyone just before we finish up?
No,
Blaise must be exhausted.
I'm good. I as you know, Paul, I'm chatty. I'll sit here. Take us.
That's all right. Did I see Kate Byrne wave her hand? No. You can unmute yourself there if you want.
Most very happy with the lecture. It was really entertaining and very enjoyable. Thank you.
Thanks. These Zoom things are a bit funny because, well, you know, if I was in a room with you all, there'd be just that shifting of people, and as you can sense their attention levels going up and going down, and I've realised how reactive I am to the presence of people, and there's just this sort of dead silence that you're talking into here, you know, in the room. I did some workshops and I had my daughters helping me operate the cameras, and it was great when they were in the room, you know, because at least there was 2 people there who I could sense, you know. So these things are funny, you know. So it's hard to know if you lose your thread in a way. I don't know. It's different.
I know. Well, You didn't. It really did flow. You have a lot of very nice chats there, saying many thanks for very enjoyable presentation, a very uplifting exhibition. And so, can you read them there?
I can
really
see them.
Engaging,
Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So,
that's very nice of everybody. Thank you. I'm copying and pasting all those now. I'm gonna quote them. You can cut.
That's fine. Look, and you were really very good to come and give it on
Yeah,
a
and
Saturday morning again.
no problem at all. I'm delighted it worked today. That's a huge relief. I'm sorry about Tuesday night.
I'm delighted it worked as well. Yeah, no,
okay.
It really did. So listen, really thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And I have, what was I going to say? I have recorded this, so probably in higher definition, maybe. Yeah, and probably in higher definition than you may be seeing it now. So I'll post it and send it to you, Paula, if anybody wants to skip through it.
All the people who wanted it, there's a number of people asking to see it. They really hope that you would have a recording, so I told them you would.
Great.
So thank you very much again.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for coming on this morning. Yeah, thanks. And thanks Paula for having me. Okay, bye everybody. Thanks.
Bye.